My subject is Agnihotra, as it provides environmental protection and also enhancement of the environment. So I'll go straight into a PowerPoint I've prepared and share from there. 1 minute. The main thing with Agnihotra is that it purifies consciousness and it purifies the environment at the same time. So this is a really unique thing about Agnihotra. There are many New Age things out there that, like Reiki, meditation, not so New Age, really ageless, but they all work mostly on the level of purifying and uplifting the mind. Agnihotra does both. It both purifies consciousness and the environment. So this is the need of the hour. And of course, you've heard all these talks from Bruce, Ulrich, all the scientific demonstrations that this actually works, the purifying of the environment. And then you've heard a lot of experiences from people about how it heals the mind, purifies the atmosphere in their home, protects them from natural disasters, protects them from catching viruses and colds. You've heard the experiences, you've seen the demonstrations, so I don't feel like I need to convince people with the science, but I'll talk about lots and lots of experiences, our own, about our bore and transforming the bore water from a highly saline and highly alkaline condition that was not conducive to growing food at all, to potable water. I'll talk about how Agnihotra, in the context of organic farming, can heal diseased crops, and I'll talk about radioactivity. We've all heard about what happened with Fukushima and Chernobyl. So there are Agnihotris who've had experiences of protection from radioactivity. I'll talk about our experience with electromagnetic force distortion fields called EMF from electrical power lines. I'll talk about bushfires that we recently experienced here in Australia and protection. I'll talk about protection from fierce storms, twisters, volcanic eruptions, landslides, and chemical pollution as experienced in Bhopal and as we experienced miraculously with chemtrails in the sky above our Homa farm. So Agnihotra, how does it protect us? Well, it creates a protective field on both a biological and energetic level. So when we perform Agnihotra, we facilitate a channel in the atmosphere from the physical plane right up to the sun. And this enables the full functioning of sunrise and sunset and its mechanism on a planet. So sunrise and sunset, when especially sunrise, I can talk about sunrise with more clarity, there's a flood of pristine energies coming in from the sun into the planet at the time of sunrise, all the way down to the physical plane. This only happens, this bridge of, this full bridge between the sun and the physical plane, and the full spectrum of energies, of life-sustaining energies from the sun. This only happens at sunrise and sunset. So there is a bridge created between the very generator of life force and all the life-sustaining energies that the planet needs, that nature needs. There's a bridge between the sun and the physical plane when we, individuals, human beings, perform Agnihotra. On a polluted planet, this flood of pristine energies and prana, life force, that comes in to energize, purify, and enable nature to constantly sustain all the kingdoms on a daily level. This flood of energies is blocked by pollution. So the prana, as it floods in on a polluted planet, it is largely blocked and distorted as that flood passes through the atmosphere. When we do Agnihotra, we create an opening in the atmosphere, enabling this healing energy to come through and renew nature. So this is incredibly important. We are on a polluted planet, and it's getting worse and worse. Pollution not only on a physical level, but subtle energies like EMF, like 5G that's about to be introduced to the whole planet, which is going to disrupt on such a powerful level. So we need Agnihotra. We need Agnihotra to enable this natural mechanism to take place in its full potential. So this is the way it enhances our environment, and this is the way it protects. So when we perform Agnihotra, not only is there a flood of prana, but there's the micronutrients which are stored in the stratosphere. They are brought in with sunrise energies right down to the physical plane, and those micronutrients nourish the biosphere that Agnihotra creates. So we create a biosphere of pristine prana and micronutrients and fragrance and a heightened vibration, because prana is a high vibrational substance. And all the mantras that we say in Agnihotra, they are like a resonance back out into the environment, boosted out through the pyramid and through the fire. So this creates a biosphere, and that biosphere extends for about 12 kilometers up and about 1 kilometer diameter. So this biosphere is one of the mechanisms of protection. And as someone else explained, all the Gi particles that go out through our Agnihotra and other homas we may perform in homotherapy, these Gi particles are carrying this prana and the micronutrients and the heightened vibration and adhering to the water bodies, adhering to the soil, adhering to our skin, to the leaves of the plants, and protecting us. So there's this wonderful happening that's so simple to create through twice daily Agnihotra, sunrise, sunset. So in relationship to protection, of course, we cannot give guarantees because everything is relative to our karma, relative to our effort, etc. But the key is correct performance of Agnihotra. So we can't stress this enough because there's so many different Agnihotras out there. And of course, in the Hindu culture and in Vedic traditions, there's many types of Agnihotras. But the mission of Sri Gajanana Maharaj and his, he had many students, and one of them, Sri Vasant Karantapi, was to bring Agnihotra into its pure Vedic form, pure Vedic science, free of religious or cultural additions. So back to the pure Vedic science, to give out to the whole world, everybody, whether we're a Muslim, whether we're a Hindu, whether we're a Christian, an atheist, an agnostic, it doesn't matter. This is a Vedic super science that is to go out to the whole world. And being a science, everything is very exact. So we can't change the size of the copper pyramid. It must be as given in homotherapy. We can't change or add to the ingredients. It must be pure cow's ghee and pure cow dung with unbroken grains of rice as an offering into the fire at the time of Agnihotra. It must be the correct mantra with no Om added or any other mantras added while the fire is burning. And it must be correct timing to the second. So this is, we can never emphasize this enough. Just going to take a sip of water. So Agnihotra in itself creates this biosphere, which is in itself experienced as enhancing the environment and protecting the environment. We can fortify that Agnihotra biosphere, and we can extend coverage, as explained in the Homa farming talk by Bruce. So Agnihotra covers approximately 40 acres, just one Agnihotra, its beneficial influence. Of course, the closer to the Agnihotra fire, the more potent the healing energy. But the coverage is, beneficial coverage is approximately 40 acres. We can fortify that biosphere filled with the prana that Agnihotra attracts and all the micronutrients that Agnihotra attracts from the stratosphere. We can fortify that biosphere with Om Triambakam Homa. And we can extend the coverage of 40 acres to up to 200 acres with the Homa resonance system. And I have a little diagram there explaining what the Homa resonance system is. I won't go into that. It's more important that people simply start up Agnihotra and perform it correctly. That's the most important thing. But there are degrees of homotherapy which can give more and more protection, if you like, and more enhancement. And if you are facing very difficult circumstances, for example, on a farm where you're performing Agnihotra regularly and giving ash to the plants and the water bodies, etc., but you are still having problems, then you can think about adding on Triambakam Homa, for example, to enhance the healing. Or you can think about calling on a homotherapist to install the resonance system to increase the coverage and strengthen the biosphere. And then a really profound level of homotherapy is ceaseless Om Triambakam fire, with the foundation being sunrise, sunset Agnihotra every day. And that is being done in 2 places as far as I know. One in Baltimore, Virginia. I think it went for, you remember? 17 years, non-stop, on Triambakam Homa, by Agnihotris taking turns. 17 years, can you imagine? I went there, and the energy field was extraordinary. I went there, I think in 1990. At that time, I was scared of insects. I wasn't very grounded. And I went to the farm where this ceaseless fire took place. And the insects just looked like God to me. Everything was divine. And this is what this ceaseless fire can do. And there's another ceaseless fire that's going on to this day in Tapovan, India. I think they've been going for about 20 years or more. Incredible. And then in Australia, we performed Ceaseless Fire for 1 year in Sydney. And Sri Vasant did tell us that just by performing this ceaseless Om Triambakam Homa on the background of daily sunrise, sunset, Agnihotra, a lot of disasters due for Sydney were ameliorated. That was an amazing statement. So the wonderful thing about the Homa resonance system, which involves sunrise, sunset, Agnihotra, and up to 4 hours of Om Triambakam Homa a day. Now, many people would think, oh, that's too much of an ask. But for example, say you superimposed that on a whole village, then people can take turns to do the Om Triambakam Homa. And in this picture here, you can have everybody's plot of land is benefiting from this one Homa resonance system. So I think this is a wonderful way for the future, because as the planet gets more and more polluted, and without a doubt that is the case over the next few years, we're going to need protection like this. And not only does it give protection, but it creates a peace, a peacefulness that passes understanding. It is incredible. People come to Om Sri Dharma, our homotherapy center, or they visit Brugoraranya in Poland, or they go to Topolban, or where Lisa and Richard Powers live in Madison. Do they live in Madison? Yeah, Madison, Virginia. And people say they can't believe the peace. Anyone can create this peace in their own home by just doing daily Agnihotra. But here is a planetary solution, the Homa resonance system. So this is our farm. When we arrived on this land, it was in a terrible condition of drought. I think New South Wales, a state in Australia, had been in drought for many years. And Sri Vasant had suggested to Fritz and I that we get a farm and apply Homa organic farming as an example to others of what Agnihotra and homotherapy could do on the level of organic farming and on the level of healing a piece of land. So here we were in drought. There was no water to speak of. We had water tanks to catch rainwater, but no rain, so those tanks were empty. There was no way we could grow crops and water them because we had no water. One day we visited Sri Vasant in India, and some miraculous thing took place. I won't go into that, but as a result, he told us, you go back to Australia and you will find water. Well, we didn't know how that was going to take place, but we called in a diviner, a well-known, renowned diviner for his accuracy. He walked the land and he told us, don't even bother to sink a bore because there's no underground water to speak of. Well, we had been told we were going to find water on our land. So we hired a bore company anyway, despite what the diviner had told us. And we didn't know where to advise the driller to drill the bore, had no idea. We left it up to him, and you can see in the picture here where the bore well was drilled on that side of the land. So I don't know if I move my mouse, if you can see that, but anyway, you can see the writing. Now, the red arrow let's go back a bit. So we drilled, the bore well was dug, and we hit water, but the water was highly saline and alkaline. Too saline, too alkaline to water a plant. It would just kill it. And of course, we couldn't use that for drinking water either. So what we did is we did Agnihotra next to the bore well. And then every now and then we'd switch off the bore pump, fill up a watering can with ash water with Agnihotra ash in it, and tip it down the bore well. So that's how we got it into the groundwater. And by coincidence, divine coincidence, the Department of Water Resources, the State Department of Water Resources, they were doing tests on the bores in our area because we were in drought, and they wanted to understand the standing water level and the quality of the water. Well, to our surprise and their surprise, every test they did, the water just kept getting better and better and better, and the salinity dropped to the point where it was potable water, and the overly alkaline condition reverted back to a more balanced pH. So the water was high quality. Now, not only that, so maybe several months later, another diviner visited us. He was interested in taking up Agnihotra, and we asked him to walk the land. We didn't tell him about the bore. We had built, where the bore had been drilled, we had built a shed around that, and so the bore was not visible. Well, he came back after walking the land, and he said, I don't understand what's happening here. So you can see those red arrows. He says, look, there is a water course. So it follows those arrows. It makes a left-hand turn. It goes under your fire hut. It goes up to this shed, turns back on itself, and then travels along its way. He said, I've never seen anything like it. When I went to India to visit Sri Vasant, I told him about this, and he laughed hysterically, and he said, so you see, when you look after nature, she looks after you. Now, at that time, there was no such thing as bioresonance. That was developed later. So we were simply doing twice daily Agnihotra and several hours of Om Trampakam Homa daily. But when you make effort to heal and give back to nature, then the law is cause and effect, or like attracts like, nature looks after you. Nature looks after you. So this is another mechanism of protection. Your input and is returned back to you. Or you could say like good karma. Sri used to say, when you perform Agnihotra, you get karmic credit in your karmic bank account, karmic credit. Here's another farm in Indonesia, in an island called Sumbawa. There was a young man called Luca who contacted us last year, and he was very excited to tell us what had taken place. He had gone to caretake an organic farm in Indonesia. He's an Italian man, I believe. And what had taken place there was a viral disease called Mosaic disease. The virus affects the crop, altering the shape of the leaves and significantly lowering the fruit production. With the Mosaic virus, there's nothing one can do. It goes in the RNA of plants, or the genetics of the plant. And it lasts for 50 years. And it is spread by drops of water, chewing insects, manure. If the livestock eats an infected plant, the manure will be infected. And if you harvest seeds from an infected plant, you will grow an infected plant. It was everywhere, including in the surrounding jungle. Now, the owner of that farm had heard about Agnihotra and had an Agnihotra kit. Luca approached him. He said, I'm desperate. I've used all my organic knowledge, and he was university trained, but I cannot get anywhere with all the organic methods. I cannot get anywhere with this virus. So the owner of the property talked to him about Agnihotra. Luca looked us up on the internet, studied about it, and even though he was skeptical, he thought it was ridiculous. You say gobbledygook mantras into a pyramid with fire and you expect to get results. It was too much for his Western mind. But desperate, he started performing twice daily Agnihotra. So what happened was incredible. So only after 2 months of daily Agnihotra and spreading ash all over the land, the Mosaic disease remains on the plants, but which die, but does not spread to new plants. So after 2 months, the farm was free of Mosaic virus. This is unheard of. The soil pH changed from 8, highly alkaline, to 6.5 just by spreading Agnihotra ash over the soil. He was astounded. Perfect for growing vegetables. And his bore water, where he put Agnihotra ash down because he was inspired by our story, the salinity of the bore water greatly reduced. Now, all he did was sunrise, sunset Agnihotra and spread ash over the farm. So there are various levels of homotherapy, but even just performing Agnihotra and using the ash, people can have amazing results. I think this was shared, but of course, if we're going to talk about Agnihotra and environmental protection, radioactivity is something we need to address. So a colleague of ours, Karen Heschel, a homotherapist, she had a farm in Austria in 1986 when the Chernobyl accident happened. And the radioactive cloud passed over the whole of Europe, right up to England. And she was practicing the principles of full Homa organic farming, sunrise, sunset, Agnihotra, 4 hours daily Om Tram Bakam, and 24 hours of Om Tram Bakam Homa on full moon and new moon days. Immediately after the Chernobyl accident, the Austrian government issued instructions that samples of all milk and fodder in our area should be tested for radioactivity. The scientists were shocked to find that the fodder and milk on her farm had just the normal background radioactivity, while all the surrounding farms had radioactive contamination. So here's a beautiful example of protection by homotherapy, even from this, this incredibly potent pollutant radioactivity. I'd like to tell you about another amazing experience on our farm or Agnihotra Center. So in 2012, Jake Wearing visited us. He wanted to learn about Agnihotra. And he had just been to a workshop specializing on EMF, electromagnetic distortion fields. And he had with him an EMF meter. And he had been going around measuring the amounts of EMF distortion on his meter. And he was very interested to see that our Agnihotra hut was right next to a power transformer, which carries a high level of EMF. So we encouraged him to take readings. So this is between our fire hut and the power transformer. And you can see, hopefully, that the dial is measuring 0 EMF on the left photo. Then approximately 50 meters away from our fire hut, under power lines, the meter is registering a level of EMF. But next to our fire hut, even though under a power transformer, 0 EMF. How is that possible? Does that mean there's no electricity going to our property? Of course there's electricity, but the harmful radiation is neutralized by Agnihotra. Next one. Right. Another remarkable thing was he was standing under power lines 50 meters away from our fire hut, measuring EMF. And I walked up to him to give him a glass of ash water because it was a hot day. And he noticed that as I moved the glass of water towards him and towards the meter, the dial went down to approximately 0. Just the presence of Agnihotra ash water was impacting the EMF from the power lines. And another thing took place, that when Fritz or I, who are Agnihotris, walked towards him and towards, he was still standing under this power line with where EMF was registering on the meter. Again, it went down to close to 0. Now, Sri Vasant, our Agnihotra teacher, had said, when you perform Agnihotra, not only do you create a biosphere in your environment, but your energy field is full of this protective energy. And here we are, we had this amazing experience where we could see that our energy field was influencing EMF distortion. So again, that is protection on a very personal level. Well, you probably all, I'm sure you all heard about the bushfires in Australia, November, December, and January. 3 months of bushfire storms, the level of which we have never experienced. It was very tragic. We've lost a lot of bushland. We've lost a lot of native animals. People have lost their farms, and people have lost their lives. Of course, we were affected. We were in an area, I don't know if you can see, OSD means On Sri Dam, and Sweetman's Creek is where we live. This is the fire department putting out maps to show you what's happening in your area with the fires at the time. So the dark shading is a fire front, a massive fire front. So on the left, a big fire front. On the right, a big fire front. And this is our valley here, Om Sri Dam. So for 3 months, the fires were going on. We were saturated in smoke. We had to wear masks when we went outside. And every day we were watching, pulling up the fire maps and feeling quite nervous. But even though the fire front approached us to half a kilometer away, and by the way, this dark coloring is bush. So highly flammable bush, because drought, we had been in severe drought. So cracking dry, like kindling. Yet that fire front never moved. It was like a ring past knot around our farm. It never moved beyond that point that you see there, 1/2 kilometer away. There were times when we'd watch the weather forecast and particularly nervous about wind direction, because when there were violent winds, very strong winds, and often they were forecast to be blowing in the direction that would blow the fire onto our farm. Yet every day, the fire, when there was such a forecast for such winds, they ended up blowing in the opposite direction, blowing the fire away from us. So this is the miracle of protection that homotherapy can provide. Then, I'll just take another sip of water, 1 minute. During this 3-month period, I was, a lady contacted me by phone. She was both in shock and euphoric. Her property had just been miraculously protected, and the only thing she could attribute it to was performing daily Agnihotra. So her property was a rural property, and it was in the middle of a massive fire front, massive, where there were firestorms, where the flames were going up so high that even helicopters could not come in to drop water because they couldn't get low enough. The fire was too high and the visibility was impossible. She stayed on her farm until the very last moment, and she was very lucky to escape. She escaped up on a hill. A property had been burnt and protected by the fire services the day before. So the whole bush around that home had been burnt. So she felt that she would probably be safe up there. So she went up there with her dogs, and she watched the fire front come, and the visibility was nil because the fire was so massive, and she didn't think there would be any hope for that her property would survive. Anyway, the next day she went down there, and her home was completely intact. The fire had come up to 1/2 meter away from her home, and it was a wooden farmhouse, highly flammable. In the paddock where her beehives were, the fire had simply left a ring around the beehives. You can see the picture there, and it didn't burn the wooden fireboxes, impossible. The cows somehow were safe. Her vegetable garden was untouched. When she came down to see her property, the fire brigade were there. They couldn't come to the fire because it was a firestorm. Helicopters couldn't get there, fire brigades couldn't get there. And they kept querying her, were you protecting your house? Were there people here with hoses? She said, no, there was nobody here. But she said what took place about 3 months before the fires started, she had this gut feeling she must renew her Agnihotra practice. And so she took up Agnihotra and practiced every day 3 months prior to the bushfires. And she knew that was what protected her. All the properties around her were burnt down. When people asked her, she said, yes, it's because I do Agnihotra. But the skeptical Australian consciousness said, no, darling, you're just lucky. But we know better. And she knows better. So homotherapy protects in many ways. And I'd like to read a Vedic statement. Agnihotra does not destroy anything. It changes matter, including subtle matter such as the mind, from a distorted state into an ideal state of matter. So to me, this is the only way I can understand how in Agnihotra biosphere, where Agnihotra is performed on a farm, for example, and ash is applied, that if you have highly acidic soil, it will, the soil will come back into a life-friendly condition, or more a neutral level of pH. If you have highly alkaline soil and you perform Agnihotra and spread ash, it comes into a more a neutral state, conducive to growing food, conducive to life. So when it says it changes matter, including subtle matter such as mind, from a distorted state into an ideal state of matter, what is an ideal state of matter? I can only conclude that it is a life-friendly state of matter. The same with the EMF from the electricity power lines. I mean, the electricity still works. It's not neutralized, but it's changed into an ideal state, and it's no longer life unfriendly. And then another way that homotherapy protects, and it's been demonstrated scientifically, is that pathogenic bacteria is greatly reduced while beneficial microorganisms thrive. Again, a life-friendly state is created. And then, of course, a great protection comes from being centered and balanced and stress-free in the mind. And then we make the right decisions for ourselves and our family. And this is what Agnihotra does. It neutralizes stress, and it brings our body, mind, and emotion into a balanced state. And it's just about immediate. As soon as you do Agnihotra, you feel better. So that's a very important aspect of protection on a personal level. And then, again, karmic credit, by giving back to nature, nature gives back to us. And Sri Vasant would always say, when you perform Agnihotra, nature gives a feedback of love and gratitude. I'd just quickly like to say that we had a visitor who was very attuned to subtle energies, or she had subtle experiences. For example, she could talk to trees and hear them talk back to her, a bit like Parvati. And I told her what Sri Vasant had said, that nature, the trees, the plants, the animals, the microorganisms, everything is so grateful. And we get a feedback of love from nature when we perform Agnihotra. Now, this lady, she was staying on her property, she was learning Agnihotra, and as she was walking to her caravan past a beautiful big guardian gum tree, the gum tree said to her, "It's true, you know, we're very grateful for Agnihotra." She told us in the morning. So another stunning example of protection in Venezuela, in South America, in December 1999, there was the Vargas disaster. So there were torrential rains for several days, and the mountainsides were sliding down. And then there was a volcanic eruption, and there was just boulders flying out and mudslides. Over 1,000 homes were destroyed, and several thousand people died or were never found. But there were Agnihotris in the area who had miraculous experiences of protection. An Agnihotri, along with her brother, lived on the 4th floor of an apartment. She performed Agnihotra every day. Her brother was skeptical, and he continually made fun of her. But when the mudslide came and it filled up the building to the 3rd floor, and they were completely protected on the 4th floor. All homes in another instance, all homes in Los Corrales were destroyed. Only one home remained, still standing and untouched. This home belonged to Mary Fuentes, who performed twice daily Agnihotra, and along with family members, performed 4 hours of Om Triambakam Homa daily. She said she felt that like there was an invisible wall surrounding and protecting the house. In Australia, I don't know when it was, maybe in the 1990s, there was massive bushfires in the ACT, and whole suburbs in Canberra, the capital of Australia, burnt down. There was one street that we were told of, the entire street burnt down except for one house. And that house had been a home where some Agnihotra friends, whenever they visited, performed Agnihotra. So Agnihotra was only performed in that house a few times, yet protection was afforded to that home. That was the only house in the street that was protected. So, and that was just a few Agnihotras over a long period of time. Here, this lady's home was completely protected, and the only house surviving from mudslides and things like that. But she did twice daily Agnihotra and 4 hours of Om Trambakam a day. Of course, we are not saying that you should do such a level of homotherapy. Sri Vasant always said, Agnihotra is enough for people in general. Agnihotra is enough. It will protect them and protect their families. But if you get the inner prompting, or you feel constantly your conscience is telling you you want to expand upon your homotherapy, then that is the way the universe is talking to you and prompting you to do what you need to do. It's all relative. Every individual is different. Then, of course, there is the Bhopal cyanide gas disaster, a wonderful example of protection. So it killed and maimed thousands, this cyanide gas leak in Bhopal. But Agnihotra families were protected. Interestingly, several families started up Om Triambakam Homa when they started to experience symptoms like sore eyes and sore throat and nausea. They started up Om Triambakam Homa, and immediately, I think they said within about half an hour, all symptoms disappeared. In the days after, volunteer Agnihotris performed Agnihotra amongst affected people and distributed Agnihotra ash medicine, including Agnihotra eye drops for the burning eyes, and it gave much relief. So we can do Agnihotra on a community level in this way, very inspiring. But also it tells us, and I've had that experience, when we're in the middle of disasters or emergencies, we can choose to start up Om Triambakam Homa to afford more protection. Here's another example of grace operating. In the Philippines, in Los Banos, there's a wonderful woman in the Philippines called Pamela Fernandez. She's a university lecturer, and for years she's been sharing Agnihotra. When she started up Agnihotra practice, she got together about 10 people, and they performed 10 Agnihotras one night on the campus in 2008. The next day, this twister, the photo that you can see, this twister touched down next in the vicinity of the campus where Agnihotris and where there was a community living, including 2 Agnihotra families. The twister touched down 2 houses away from a group of Agnihotra households, lifted up, most unusual, very rare, bypassing the Agnihotra homes, and touched down again, wreaking destruction. So I've talked about the various levels of protection that we can utilize with homotherapy. And one of those things that we can add to Agnihotra is Om Triambakam Homa.